All right, folks, I'm going to move through this at a reasonable pace, but we will have a little question and answer time at the end of it. I want everybody to keep in mind, I'm going to have folks do their own little ad campaigns at each table. So that's why you've got the big stack of papers in the center. It's a group project, so you're going to think about what you want to market as you move through this. What would be meaningful or have impact on your properties. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the philosophy. We're going to do a light touch on some pretty heavy topics. So I'm going to encourage you also to do your own deep dive. If you are interested, especially on the racial equity in advertising piece, ethical storytelling, it's such an important thing to know if you are engaging with people. So I'll give you a little bit more information for your own journey, learning journey. So we're going to learn a little bit of foundational information about the philosophy of community advertising, of grassroots community advertising. And then we're going to talk about thinking like an advertiser, which is not natural for many of us in the helping profession. So kind of thinking about how to sell something that we're trying to share with people. Outreach strategies, digital tools, infographics. We're going to go through a variety of different ways to put together and compile information in a visually understandable way, and do that trauma informed. So to make sure that the people that we're sharing information with aren't alarmed by it, so we're not using agency printing envelopes. And then we're going to talk a little bit about information retention, which is such an important piece. And it's part of the reason I'm going to have you do the work at the end to kind of think about it, move through it. It's kinetic learning. And learning by sharing information is one of the top ways to retain information. All right. Where's my clicker, Roseanne? Here's our philosophy. Next slide. All right. So this is kind of the philosophy behind grassroots advertising. We're building relationships, biggest part of the work. It's a long-term approach. We're centering cultural inclusion and having an intrinsic focus on community. Always be generous with your time, such an important piece. And incentives, they can help, but we try not to make them the focus. We want it to be about being together and coming together as a community. All right, so let's talk a little bit about racial equity in advertising. It's so important when you're telling someone else's story that they feel okay about it. And as an agency, Home Forward has made the decision that we won't ever make participation in a program, we won't make participating in media about a program contingent on their participation in the program. So you can assert that with your community partners in an MOU, in a conversation. We're not telling other people's stories. We can talk overarching how the impact was, how many people we reach, but we don't necessarily need to use pictures. And if we do, we can do that internally. So you share with a partner, I'm happy to share photos with you, but I don't have a release for this to be shared publicly. We're happy to tell you a little bit more about how your funding affected our residents, but we do not want this shared with the media or on any sort of social networking site. So that's kind of the difference between internal versus external. I've used that to kind of encourage folks. Maybe I have like a faith-based organization that donated turkeys and food boxes for Thanksgiving, and I want to encourage them and get them excited about the work that they did. And I'll make a little video of a couple of the residents saying thank you for the food box. And I'm just sharing that with the person that donated. So it's not, we're being really careful about what we're sharing as far as people's stories and who is in need when we're telling other people's stories. I'm not saying it very well. So I'm going to share at the bottom of this, there's the voice of a witness, ethical storytelling principles. I also put the link on the website, and I want to encourage everyone to do a little bit of a dive there. It's so important that we're not demonstrating the wrong thing, and we're not forcing people to engage in advertising services. We've all heard the term poverty porn. It's not appropriate, and it's not necessary in bolstering the work we do. The work that we do speaks for itself. All right, so here's your little basic information checklist. Keep this in mind because you all are going to do a little marketing campaign as a table at the end of this. I can't tell you how many times one of these items have been missed on my own flyers at a property, and fielding all those calls. I had to have my own little checklist so I didn't forget, because Roseanne and I talk about this, but you're supposed to understand everything that's in my head. Sometimes it's hard to get that out on the page, especially when it's so ingrained in our own minds. So it's good to have kind of a basic checklist of what you want to make sure to share with folks when you're advertising for an activity, event, or resource on your property. So as far as creating that image, or creating that advertisement, you want to start with a good image. Think of an eye-catching title. This is your advertising. I know it's not natural for a lot of us, but it really does it does get people excited about things. I remember I did a little bingo advertisement with a little smoking bingo player, and it was such a hoot, and people got really excited about it. Sometimes you just need to get to do something a little bit different, and to get folks to look at something that they might not have formerly been interested in a different way. You want to make sure you're drawing separate text boxes. You don't necessarily want to use different fonts, and I'll give you an idea of some good fonts to use as far as readability goes and accessibility goes, but you do want to use different sizes of said font. And then print checking your image. I'll say this a little bit later in it, but you're going to pull the sheet a full arm's length away from your face, and you're checking to see, can I read this from an arm's length from my face? And that'll help with folks that might have vision issues. There's readability is important, and that can help tremendously. And then you're also kind of looking at your layout as information where it should be, kind of coming up with a composition for your page. Roseanne had me add external review, and it's so true. For those little missing spots, you can always count on someone else to notice where they're at. Little side note, make sure to get logo approval from your partners. Oftentimes, if you're bringing in a resource, they'll want print approval. So if you're, doing an energy event, they're going to want to, sometimes they'll share something with you so you don't have to create your own. But they're going to want to make sure that the information there is accurate before they approve. So be communicative, but there's no problem asking for a logo. People usually get excited about that. Go ahead. Yes, we'll talk a little bit more about contrast a little further down. So this is the think like an advertiser portion. What's the biggest draw? Of course, food, activities, incentives. They're a good sell. And then always put your contact information on a flyer. even if someone's not going to join your event, you still want to get your name out there. You want to become second language to folks. They want to know who's doing stuff. It's a great way to advertise who you are and what you do. And I know it's dorky, but don't be afraid to put your little dorky face portrait on there. It's a benefit, because if you're working at multiple properties and not everybody's seeing your face, they're going to know who you are when you put your little dorky picture on there. Slide. All right. So, oh, we already went through that. Thinking like an advertiser, 3-tier. So this is a Wakan Alferez trick. 3-tier is basically we try and use 3 different forms of advertising when we're doing outreach. Or sometimes we use 2 of the same. We have found that Twilio, or a texting app, is quite possibly the most fruitful of our outreach efforts these days, especially in a post-pandemic world. Has anyone else used a texting app? Can I see a hands? You use texting? I know you home forward folks have. Do you guys know what a texting app is? Well, there's a variety of different applications that you can use at a pretty low cost considering how effective it is, especially if you're doing mailings, which are so expensive. But we've found that texting our residents the day of events and maybe like a week before an event can change turnout numbers astronomically. Well, it'll double how many people show up. It's that little morning reminder, and it feels personalized. I also recommend, I call it the hot call list. I always had my youth hot call list, folks that engaged, because you always have a couple households that just have their own network with their maybe a faith-based organization or a friend group or a family group. But your folks that are showing up, turning up, and are interested, it's okay to do individual outreach with a couple people, and always do the, hey, tell your neighbor. That word of mouth piece is so at the core of grassroots outreach. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about online templates. And Roseanne, where are you at? Okay, I'm going to have Roseanne share this as a handout with y'all so you have a reference. I heard someone earlier today talk about Canva. Has anyone else used online sites to do flyers and advertising? Word, yeah. Well, if you have Microsoft Publisher is a good one too. Yeah. Publisher? Huh. All right. So as you look at this, you'll see there's a couple different sources, but I recommend doing your own exploration. I bet you there's a couple dozen more out there. We did Poster My Wall this year, but I'm a big fan of Canva. They have some really great art on there. So when you're doing a search, I gave you kind of an idea of how image searches can be done. Changing the wording that you're using for your search can change. Just one word can change the entire search. So be creative. So say you're looking up, I looked up a couple things for this event, and I put free or copyright free illustration of 4 groups meeting. And then you can change that. If you don't like the results, you can say 4 puzzle pieces. So you're kind of exploring, but the more you tinker, the more likely you are to have aces up your sleeve. When it comes to putting together visual information, it's important to tinker and to play with the layout and to explore different apps out there. I also added a little bit, I want to do a shout out to Dowie, the woman that introduced this to me, but we've started to use QR codes in our outreach. It's been helpful with folks who are donating as well. The first time that we realized how fruitful this can be. And keep in mind, Canva, PictoChart, a lot of these applications have QR code links. So you can add a QR code with all the things that you might be hopeful to get in donation for a clothing closet. You can have a QR code with directions, with resources, or with requirements for a event that you're doing if you need documentation for energy assistance. And it's a nice way to have interchangeable information because you can adjust it at any point in time. Has anyone ever used QR codes? Can I see a show of hands? Love it, smarty parties. I just learned this like a week ago, so I'm pretending to be cool, but not a millennial. All right. Oh, go ahead.
that we could for free access all the like pro images and pro features. So highly recommend that.
I love that. Yeah, for our folks in Zoom, if you missed that, they have nonprofit or organizational discounts for folks. Yeah, and we pay for one of ours, and we pay for the free picks for the fancy account, and it's surprisingly affordable if you have a little bit of a budget, especially if you have extra office dollars. Some of them are like $80 a year. But I love, it's nice to have access. Go ahead, I've got a couple more questions here. I love that. For our Zoomies, that's a really easy process to apply to get access to Canva as an organization. I've got another question over here. Thank you. I did not know that. When you say secure, do you mean on like put your settings to private? Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Yeah, we should have added that to confidentiality. Yeah. You're doing the training next time. All right, Roseanne, we're going to do our next slide. Infographics. You got to love them. So Canva, all of your basic, they have infographics. Does anyone know what an infographic is? Probably. A lot of you. Infographics are basically a visual way to share information on a timeline, but it's a way of visually sharing information. So rather than explain it to you in not the best way, I'm going to show you what an infographic looks like. And there's also one on the back of your handout there. So infographics can come in handy with a lot of the things that we do that involve process. I did some generic ones that I found on Canva, but you can use these as kind of a flow of information if you have upcoming resource fairs that you want to share, timeline, if there's things you need folks to get enrolled with, and it's kind of a rigorous information collection. You can kind of add what you need them to pull together for you. I know energy assistance is a big one for us. And sometimes there's little pieces that are harder for folks to get access to, such as reporting that they don't get child support, which is such a stupid thing for people to have to report when they're not receiving it. But it's a nice way to share that information visually. And it's definitely helpful for folks that are different learners. And we're going to talk a little bit more about different learners. So when we're composing visual information, we want to make sure that we're consolidating and simplifying things. We're going to talk a little bit about color. It's definitely important to look at contrast and to make sure you're not using flowy fonts, and that you have high contrast for visual information. And then you want to avoid glossy paper, glossy print, which can be difficult for folks with visual impairments. Yeah. All right, so information retention, I always share this with folks. I'm really excited about it. This is your learning retention rates and how people learn, as I contradict myself by just doing lecture here. You guys will remember 5% of this according to this pyramid. So keep in mind that interest, social and emotional investment also play a part. There's a big debate right now on the learning pyramid. But as you can see at the bottom there, teaching others is a 90% retention rate. So if you're talking to folks and you can say, hey, don't forget to tell your neighbor or tell so-and-so, I really hope they join us too. That them starting to share that information is also them holding that information. We have kind of a round robin learning where we teach each other in a round robin cycle, and it seems like fresh information. Am I ready to teach it? We want to be expert, but the reality is that information is going to absorb more if we're sharing it, which is why we're going to do our exercise at the end of this. So keep that in mind when you're doing outreach. That verbal information and those kinetic learning opportunities where people participate in information dissemination is key. All right, best fonts for readability. I know, it's thrilling. It's really exciting stuff here, you guys. Keep it simple. You can find these online, but readability is huge. I'm dyslexic, as probably 80% of us are. I don't know. It's pretty common. And it's hard because a lot of times things just kind of melt together. So you want to make sure you've got good spacing, you've got good gaps between the letters, and going with these basic fonts kind of avoid falling into that hole and making a page just kind of meld together. All right, there's also the dyslexia font, which I'm pretty excited about, and I have to say it is really readable. They asked for a little bit of a donation, but I think there's a couple different ways to access the dyslexia font. If you do have an IT department, if you have that luxury with your organization, you can reach out to them and ask them if you are allowed to download fonts. but it's pretty easy to do in Microsoft Word, which I think most of us work in. All right. Roseanne, I'm doing that one. So spacing, just to elaborate a little bit more, you want to stick to 1.5 to 2 spacing. So you click and drag on your information and you left click. If you're working in Microsoft, you can play with your line spacing. It's all muscle memory for this old nerd that's been in Microsoft Word forever. But it's important for your information to be spread out and readable, and spacing plays a big part in that. So staying centered and resident-centered and trauma-informed. One trick Adriana Rickard, who works for my agency, shared with me is we do all of our outreach in certain color of paper. So we have pink paper at Louisa, where any of the outreach that we're doing comes on a brightly colored sheet of paper, so residents don't have to worry that they're in notice, which is unfortunately very common at that building. And it's helpful just to differentiate who's doing the outreach and who's doing the work. All right, so that's, I guess, what I just explained. You want to kind of differentiate. Yeah. So what we're gonna do, we kind of race through that because we want to spend some time putting together a little campaign at each of your tables. So I want you to kind of think about one thing that you're trying to promote or market and how you're going to do that. And you've got paper at the center of your table. Yeah, and I'll do the rounds. All right, folks, if you can finish up conversations, we're gonna report out. I'd love to see some flyers if y'all have some for me to check out. Look, that's pretty. Are we self-conscious? All right, everyone, we're finishing conversations. What was your saying, Rana? The only ones I know are from grade school, and I'm not going to paternalize you guys. All right. Oh, I love it. We've got a rent well class. Brilliant. So give me an idea of what you did here.
So what we decided to do was we wanted to put something on our flyer that catches people by asking a question. And so the question that we landed on our flyer is, do you want to learn how to increase your chances of getting your rental application approved? And that was the thing that we thought would catch people initially. And then the way we structured it was we first laid out the date, time, and the location. Apparently, Multnomah Avenue is in Michigan. That's what we made up. We named it as Rent Well so people knew what the class actually was. And then we put a little bit of info with some graphics and a couple of bullet points on our flyer. This class will teach you how to look at your pre-application housing search, identify pet policy, know if you can actually bring your pet, know your rights as a tenant, and then lastly, get your keys. And then at the end, another call to action is calling all renters, naming specifically who the class is for so that people can come out. And then our organization is called Hearts. And if you want to reach us, you can take the number 57 bus to whatever stop and meet us there.
I love it. And that is beautiful. Well composed. Good job. Thank you guys for sharing. All right. How about y'all? You don't have to. Okay. I saw you working away over here.
Right. So this is just thinking. This is not for sure. And yeah, there's that. So I came up with de-stress, stretch, and connect. The reason for this is because, well, I work at PCRI and we have multiple properties and we also have a homeownership program. And so I'm one of the homeownership program coordinators. And so on those different properties, you know, things are going on. So definitely I feel like, you know, on the properties, because of that, getting together as a community to de-stress and stretch and connect and building community is always important, especially if they feel like something should improve the building or something like that. So that's how that came to mind, and also my personal experience living on a property of myself, not with PCR, just separately. Anywho, so the what was connecting with your breath when stressed or overwhelmed is helpful. Using props like a chair, a wall to stretch your legs or arms can prevent stiffness. Connecting with your neighbors even more, moving towards the holidays, could improve your mental health and provide an opportunity to be a part of community to connect, distress, and stretch. Who residents, youth, families when Mondays and Fridays, Mondays afternoons. So like the older population to come down and do a little connecting, stretching, breathing, talking about whatever they want to connect with one another. Fridays, you know, with the youth and the families doing something, you know, could be like a movie or whatever, but before then we have a conversation, stretching and all of that, working on their mental health and stuff like that. Where all the properties. That's my idea.
Drop that mic. I love it. Thank you so much for the share. Appreciate it. All right, how about y'all?
Okay, so my name is Zahra and I work for Sabin CDC. We're low income housing. And our flyer we did here was a food pantry.
I'm gonna hold up our flyer.
Okay.
We're proud of our flyer. We went to We all had markers in our purses.
We did.
All right, on that note, go.
So it is a neighborhood food pantry at the community space, and it's located at 123 Let's Eat Avenue in Portland. And the items include fruits, veggies, bread, proteins, vegan options, and it's monthly every third Tuesday And we ask that you bring your own shopping bag.
So I wanted to put BYOB, but they're like, bring your own bag.
That's open to interpretation.
So
Yeah.
we took your pointer, so thank you.
Thank you. I love it. You guys want to? All right.
So we came up with a Halloween community barbecue. This is our flyer. We only had purple. So we have a purple hamburger and grill and spatula. And we are going to be doing door prizes for the best costume. We're going to be located in the parking lot at, I just put some dots because I don't know any addresses or couldn't think of any, on Friday, October 12th at 3 p.m. And then we have some little, let's see, clouds that say cornhole toss and pumpkin carving.
I love it. Sounds like fun. All right. How about y'all?
I work for the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and something we always have problem with is connecting with local mom and pop landlords. So we created a flyer for Let's Talk, Navigating the Waters, and it's a sort of connecting opportunity for local landlords. So we wanted to stay away from any scary fair housing language, like presentation or training. So I didn't mean that to be as funny as it actually came out. But we wrote connect with other local landlords, ask questions, and relax. And so this would be, there's a picture of an armchair, just sort of to signify that. It would be at Broadway Commons, which is a really big coffee shop, it's pretty central in Salem, between 2 and 3 p.m., which I mean, I always need a caffeine or sweet pick-me-up at that time. And then I really like your idea of including a picture of people who are going to be hosting the event. I think that's helpful when you're trying to just find the place in the building, and seeing that face you recognize and being like, okay, I'm in the right space. So we would include that as well. But yeah.
Thank you so much. Good work. Do we have a sharer, an official?
Here, you can hold it. So we got real fancy, real quick. No, I'm just kidding. So we decided to make an Save Your Energy campaign. And we were wanting to include tips on what you can do to change your habits and the outcome, and have a different corner with an outcome of how those changes will affect you, not only financially, but in your household. And then just a tiny explanation at the bottom of how good we can impact our earth and our communities by saving just a little bit of energy.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, okay. So I work in housing for seniors. So we went with the classic bingo. Trying to keep it simple with bigger font, a few different colors, just welcoming all residents, making sure that everyone was welcome. This is something I struggle with and maybe you can help with. We were talking, maybe we can use QR codes because we have 7 different languages in our building. And although I don't know what would happen once they get to bingo, how that would go, announcing bingo in 7 different languages. But I always struggle with that. How do I advertise to all of the language groups? So anyway, we just had the bare bones there. It's every Wednesday from 3 to 5 in the community room. We work in those, what did they call it? Vertical villages. That was what they were saying before. So anyone in the building is welcome to come. There's prizes available and any other little details small at the bottom, like sign up at the resident services desk. We've also done where we've had people bring prize donations to participate. So like find a mug in your cabinet you don't want anymore, and bring that as a prize. So that's ours.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a real budget-friendly idea right there. I love it. Ooh, trash and treasure. I love a good white elephant. Something, a little wild card on the gift table. All right, folks, I'm wondering, we're gonna do a little Q&A. I'm wondering if there's anything that you were interested in doing a little bit deeper of a dive or that you were really hoping to learn in this session.
A piece of advice. When we're using Canva, Canva is really wonderful for visual advertising, for posters that you're putting up, for social media. But a problem with Canva is it's not accessible for people who are using speech to text or text to speech. It doesn't pick it up like it does PDFs or Word documents. So just make sure to, if you are doing big email outreach or social media outreach, that you're including all that information on the poster within that email or within the caption of your social media. But Canva is really great for creating really beautiful graphics. But I just wanted folks to know that about Canva. Oh, yes.
My question would be, so if everybody's kind of familiar with Canva, you do have the option of when you're downloading your creation, that you're able to download it as a JPEG or even as a PDF. Would it be recommended? Would it detect it if you download it as a PDF?
I think that it comes up as one big image. I was in a different training on accessible advertising.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't practiced or tried to use it in the personally,
Yes.
but it was just a more in-depth.
Huh.
Maybe you could try it and then see if your computer can translate it, but I haven't personally tried it.
So I've attempted it with other advertisement. So like where I will take it and convert it into a PDF. And then from there I can actually convert it into a Word, but you would have to pay for the Adobe program for that, unfortunately. And when it does that, there is times where I can do the read out loud. That's why I was kind of wondering, like, question.
Are folks familiar with talk to text applications? Okay, just on the accessibility front, that's so folks can scan information and have an audio clip of what that information is. Go ahead.
Just a question, kind of piggyback. Yeah, I guess in general, do talks to text applications acknowledge JPEGs or images, or like even if the image has like text in it, or is that generally not something that's accessible?
It depends on how the text, sorry, I forgot. It really depends on how the text in that image can be read. So something that you could do on Canva, when you are putting the text boxes in, I use a Mac, so this is different. Just right click to see if it gives you the text to speech option so that you can see if it will read it. And you can double check to see if it'll do it. If it does not do it, then it just won't read it at all, no matter how you download that document. So just try it as you're editing that text and look at the templates that you're using too, because some of those templates just don't have that as an option. So if you choose that template and then you're like, I want to add some text to read here, and then it doesn't do it, it's because the template didn't give it that format. So in your initial creating it, just double check to make sure that it gives you that option. And then my other question was about Braille and accessibility for folks who may not be able to see, but may have some senses through touch. Do you have resources that are super helpful for that demographic so that we can make sure we capture folks?
Yeah, I'll actually add that in with the clips. But yeah, the Society for the Blind, they're wonderful even for different learners. After my diagnosis, I got audio tapes, and sometimes they would even read text onto audio for me. And just another little piece on the talk to text on those applications, or the text to talk. It's confusing. They're designed to read off of a book or a crisp porous page that's non-reflective, that has really high contrast. So if your person that you're working with is using an application, if you print on black and white, you usually get better results that way. But a colorful flyer, especially if you don't have a ton of contrast, it's going to be a challenge to get that information automated. Any more questions? All right, I'm not going to keep you guys. You're welcome to come chat with me on your way out. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been fun getting to know folks. Take care.